Well, hello there. Welcome back to Drummer Daily once again. Thanks for joining me wherever you are, whenever you are joining me. I just appreciate that you are taking a little bit of time out of your day to spend it with me. Hey, before I get started, I just want to let you know that I have started back up the live masterclass, the free class that I've done before. So if you've heard other episodes, I might have mentioned it previously. And these are live in-person classes, meaning I'm there teaching, going back and forth with you as you leave your comments, things like that. And so if you're interested in that and seeing what dates and times are coming up, depending on when you hear this, there may be a lot, there may not be any, but you can always find out when those are available by heading over to danielhadaway.com/class and check that out. I really appreciate that. And speaking of that, actually today's episode, which is episode number 189, by the way, so you can always check out the show page for this episode by going to danielhadaway.com/189. Incidentally, today's episode is going to kind of talk about, not specifically about that free class that I'm talking about, but just more about the advice that I give in general and how it relates to your drumming. But before I do that, before I get there, I just want to say it looks like, the last episode was my first episode using a new hosting platform for my podcast, and it looks like everything transitioned over just fine. And so I was glad to see that. So that's a little insight to my thinking and my where I'm at right now. Looks like everything's good. I was not stressed about it, but I was very hyper aware that was happening and hoping that no one got lost in the shuffle. And I don't think it did. If you're subscribing to this podcast, then and you're hearing this episode, then you most likely everything worked. So anyway, made me happy. All right, so we're at almost 200 episodes now on this podcast, and I've probably shared a lot of information. I haven't done the math in a while on how many hours of content this podcast is generated. But it's a lot. There's a lot there, and I've shared a lot. I've suggested a lot. I've said you need to do this or that a lot, and so there's just a lot of information out there. And I've also, I have all these other resources I've created in the past, like Boom Click Bootcamp, which is, the click track training thing. And then, of course, Pro Drum Academy, which is the 6-week class that I teach. And there's other things too. But I want to specifically talk about Boom Click Bootcamp because it's been around the longest, and it gave me some insight into how most drummers approach their practice. And the thing is, other than working with other drummers like that, I don't have any insight into what other drummers think. I only know what I think. And so I have to use the feedback that I get to understand everything. And interestingly, with Boom Click Bootcamp, and this has actually been true of Pro Drum Academy and some of the other things I've done as well. But there's been a couple of hundred people who've gone through Boom Click Bootcamp now. And I get feedback. I ask for feedback at the end of that. It's a 2-week course, and so at the end of that, I ask for feedback, and I get emails every once in a while. People actually do that, and what happens is, I get a lot of positive feedback, of course, which I'm always very happy to see, and I do get some negative feedback, and sometimes it's like, this was kind of hard to navigate, or I didn't understand where this was or that, and that's really good stuff. Sometimes, not often, but sometimes. I get emails that are like, this thing just isn't working. It didn't work. Like I'm not, playing like this. It didn't work for me. I didn't get any better with the click track, whatever. And the same thing happens with Pro Drum Academy, where it's like people will finish Pro Drum Academy, or they'll get through after 6 weeks after they join, and or even 6 months after they join. They'll reach out and say, hey, this isn't working. I'm not getting any gigs, or I'm not getting any sessions, or whatever it is. Whatever the point of the thing is, they're not getting it. It's not happening for them. And my first question to them is it's kind of disingenuous because I know the answer to the question already. I'll tell you why in a minute. But the question always is, well, did you do what I told you to do? So for Boom Click Bootcamp, it's, did you actually show up and do every day's lesson for 14 days like I tell you to? Did you actually show up and do those 20-minute lessons each day? Or for Pro Drum Academy, it's, even if you showed up and took the class, did you actually implement? Did you actually do anything that I taught in the class? Or did you do what I taught you in the class, in the order I taught you, in the specific way I tell you to do it? And in both cases, the answer is inevitably no, but this or that. But the answer is always no. I didn't do what you told me to do, but I'm upset that I didn't get the result you promised. And I just want to challenge you. Number one, by the way, the reason why it's disingenuous is because I can look in my classes that I teach. I can see each person. I can see whether they've shown up for the classes. So for like Boot Camp, of course, all you really have to do is show up and play along with the videos, and you get better. And then with ProDrum Academy, it's more of a classroom type setting. And so I know some people who have complained who haven't even shown up for all the classes, in which case it's like, all right, what do you want me to do? But there's a lot of people who show up for the class, but they just don't do anything with what they learn. They don't, and what's the point of taking any class or learning anything? What's the point of listening to this podcast? I try to have a lot of inspiration, so I get that. If it's just encouraging you, that's great. But if you want to actually get results, either whether it's in your playing or in your career as a drummer or whatever it is, if you're looking for tangible results, I want to challenge you to actually do what I'm talking about. And it can be as simple as just whatever episode you hear, make a commitment that when you hear me suggest that you do something, if your goal lines up with what I'm talking about, just do it. Just say, I'm going to do it. If it's, 3 tips for doing that, sit down and follow those 3 tips. Try those things out. If it's whatever it is, just follow it. A more extreme version of that, if you really are dedicated, you can go back to episode number 1 of this podcast, start at 1 and go through all of the episodes and say, I'm going to do what Daniel says in this podcast, and follow through with all of it. Because I do believe that if you actually do what I'm teaching, you will, you can, you do have the ability, and I believe that things will happen for you, whether it's gigs or sessions or whatever it is that you're looking for. I just believe that it's going to happen, and it's not based on just some kind of weird mystic belief. It's actually just the evidence will speak for itself. The stuff I'm teaching is not secret or sacred in any way. It's literally just the experiences that I've had and other musicians that I know have had. I'm sharing how to make things happen the way they did and the way that I did. So I want to challenge you today. If you're not doing anything that I'm teaching, and you really are frustrated with your progress in your career or in your playing as a drummer or whatever it is, you got to actually do some of this stuff. But I also don't mind if you're just listening for entertainment and you're not frustrated. That's cool too. I'm just happy you're hanging out with me. All right, so tomorrow or the next episode, whenever you hear it, I am going to talk. I'm going to answer a question from a listener. Again, I love getting questions about drumming and drumming careers and all that stuff. So I'm going to get back into that in the next episode. So I can't wait to hang out with you then. But go out there and actually do something. Follow what I'm teaching and sign up for my class if you haven't already. DanielHadaway.com/class. It'll be a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me though, and we'll talk again real soon. Bye for now.